Also, there's a survey that is going to pop up at the end of this webinar. We'd really appreciate it if you would complete that survey along with the number of people that are viewing this webinar with you so that we can have an accurate number of people that actually watched this webinar. And now I would like to introduce to you our speaker for tonight. Her name is Miss Lisa Blackman-Jones. She's been a registered nurse for over 25 years, 17 of which has been a school nurse, and is currently a nurse specialist at the Houston ISD in Houston, Texas. Miss Blackman-Jones has nursing experience in adult medical, surgical, pediatric labor and delivery, postpartum and neonatal intensive care. She's currently the Vice President of Texas Nurse Organizations, Region 4, and is a member of the American Nurse Association, Texas Nurse Association, Texas Organization of Nurse Executives. Ms. Blackman received her associate degree in nursing from San Jacinto College with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from Prairie View A&M University and a Master of Science in Health Education from Texas Southern University. She's currently pursuing her Doctor of Nursing Practice degree at Texas Tech Health Sciences Center in Lubbock and will graduate in May of this year. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over on to Ms. Lisa Blackman-Jones.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about managing epilepsy at school. Overview. Factors that impact school performance, how to address academic problems, what is needed for positive communication with school personnel. 45,000 children under the age of 15 develop epilepsy each year. Epilepsy is a common childhood neurological disorder. Incidence is highest under the age of 2. Schools therefore are responsible for educating many children with epilepsy. We educate the children, the families, and the school about epilepsy. Your child's medical care will continue in the school setting. Start each school year by scheduling a meeting with your school's nurse. All nurses, all schools should know whether or not a student has whatever kind of disease in their schools. Could be diabetes, could be seizures, could be anything. Do consult the nurse. Discuss your child's condition, prescription, and special medical needs. Develop an asthma action plan, a seizure action plan, a seizure observation records, because you want to monitor how many times the student might have a seizure, how often, is there anything different going on with this student having a seizure during school. Keep in touch throughout the school year about your child's progress, changes in medication, and any related issues. Because remember, students, sometimes they have a growth spurt, the medication might need to be increased or decreased or changed, it may not be working, or if over the summer they had more seizures than normal. So you want to keep in touch with the school nurse about any progress or any changes that have gone on. The reported incidence of academic problems for students with epilepsy has varied from 15% to 54%. Academic intervention. An effective intervention first requires identification of the specific obstacles needed for academic progress. We want to help the students progress. We don't want to have anything hinder their progress with education. Factors that influence learning and social functioning in children with epilepsy: seizures, anticonvulsive medications, cognitive learning disabilities, attention, psychosocial factors. These all play a part in the student's development. Seizures and academic performance. Both nocturnal and daytime seizures can interfere with academic performance. Sometimes students don't sleep enough, don't get enough sleep, have seizures, they're tired, their body's tired. It can interfere with academic performance. Anticonvulsants can impair learning by affecting changes in alertness, mood, specific cognitive functions. Possible side effects of medications, daytime sleepiness, and mood changes are more common with some medications than others. Increased sleepiness is also more common with higher doses and when medications are combined. There are individual differences in how medications affect any patient. Remember, one medication may affect a different student a different way. Someone may be smaller, one medication may make them sleepy, may not touch another student. So you always want to get the best medication for the best person, for the best patient, for the best student. Cognitive learning issues. The abnormality in the brain that causes seizures can also be associated with cognitive or learning problems. Cognitive problems can range from specific deficits that cause specific learning disabilities to more global impairments that are characterized as intellectual disability. How severe are the seizures? How much of an impact are the seizures on the student's education progress? Attention deficit disorder. Estimates of frequency of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in individuals with epilepsy has ranged from 3% to 40%. One of the most common causes of academic problems in children with epilepsy is ADHD. Behavioral symptoms of ADHD: inattention, distractibility, impulsivity, hyperactivity, variability of performance. These all play a part in the student's education progress. Epilepsy and ADHD. Children with epilepsy and ADHD respond to the same medication and educational interventions that are used with other children with this condition. Family, school, and social relationships. Epilepsy has the potential to distort the relationship between child and parent. Teachers may have altered attitudes and expectations for the students with epilepsy. They may protect that student a little bit more, may not give them a little bit more work because they don't want a seizure to happen, but they should be treated just like anyone else. Peer relationships may also be impacted by the presence of seizures or a diagnosis of epilepsy. That's when the nurse comes in and educates the students about what's going on so they can have an idea on how to help the student, and so the student can be as normal as possible. And that's what school nurses usually do. They want to make the student progress as normal as possible. Psychological factors that impact learning: increase anxiety, reduce academic requirements, reduce expectations. If you think your child is struggling academically, contact school personnel, the vice principal, the assistant principal, the principal, counselor, classroom teacher, and ask that your child be discussed at the next meeting of the Student Assistance Committee. It helps to put your request in writing, email, written note, or letter, and the communication should say, my child has a medical condition that I believe is impacting his or her education. Parents need to get involved. If nurses are aware, they need to get involved too, to help the student to be successful. It is helpful to provide a list of specific problems your child is experiencing, not finishing tests or anything else. You don't want your child to get behind, and then there are resources that are available for your child. An assessment of a student's academic problem can involve any or all of the following: classroom teacher input, observations of other school personnel like assistant teachers, vice principals, principal, other students, full and individual evaluation conducted by the school, neuropsychological evaluation are all possible. Specific interventions will depend on the identified problem. Examples: increase structure and time to address problems such as inattention, reduced alertness or slow processing speed. A lot of times, if students are having seizures, they might be having absence seizures where they just stare, so they might get a little bit behind. So we want to take note of that and prepare a learning environment conducive to that. Note-taking assistance for a student with motor problems, reading intervention to address a reading disability, modified curriculum for a study with a significant learning or intellectual disability. Interventions. Sometimes appropriate interventions only involve a systematic application of good educational practices such as preferential seating or monitoring for attention and understanding of instructions. We want to put those students in the front where we can see them or the teacher can see them and notice them and have their eyes on them. This level of intervention may include more intensive reading or math instruction and tutorial. Classroom instruction. Examples of acceptable accommodations for classroom instruction and the STAR can be found on the website of Texas Education Agency, TEA. So it's tea.state.texas.us. Primary laws that apply to children with epilepsy. The American with Disabilities Act, ADA, Section 504, applies to public schools and private schools, which are federally funded. It is part of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, a federal law that protects individuals from discrimination based on disability. Under this law, individuals with disabilities may not be excluded from or denied the opportunity to receive benefits and services from certain programs. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, guarantees a free, appropriate public education to children with disabilities. Special education at no cost to child's parents or guardian. Individualized education program sets forth the special education needs and related services to be provided. All students, if able, can attend school. Whether you have seizures, diabetes, ADHD, should be able to attend school unless it was something more severe going on. Special education services for students are determined by an Adhd committee, and the committee decides whether the student qualifies for special education services, what the specific special education needs of the students are, where and how those educational needs can be best met. Parents as advocates. Parents are members of the 504 and Adhd committees, and they have a legal right to agree or disagree with the rest of the committee. Do be an advocate for your child. Nurses, be an advocate for your child. Teachers, be an advocate for the students. The process works most smoothly, however, when you maintain a good relationship and work cooperatively with school personnel. Document conversations, keep good records. Conclusions. With few exceptions, students with epilepsy should attend school. They may need additional educational support. For the most part, their needs are not unique. Interventions designed to address attitudes about epilepsy may be necessary to avoid social problems. This presentation was made possible in collaboration with the Epilepsy Foundation of Texas and by U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration grant. Thank you.
So, Lisa, this is Moreau, and I'm the program director here at the Epilepsy Foundation. Could you tell us a little bit about when a student with epilepsy comes to your school? What are some of the things that you do to accommodate maybe their different learning needs? What does a parent have to do at Houston ISD to get some accommodations?
Okay, usually we would encourage the parents, and nurses have an open door policy. So they would usually, the parent would usually come to the nurse and tell the nurse the particulars of their child. because not all children are alike, so therefore, or have a disability, but how often are they having seizures? How has it made an impact on their education process? Is there an impact? Are they making good grades? Has there been any difference medication-wise? What's going on with the medication? How often are they having medications, getting their medications? Do they need medications at school? When they do have a seizure, what do you want us to do? What is the norm? How long does the seizure normally last? What kind of seizures do they have? So it depends on what's going on with that particular student. Do we say, well, this student should be taken here, or this student should be in a regular class, or this student is no problems at all?
Are you able to give emergency medication at HISD like Diastat?
We are able to give Diastat with a doctor's order, and we usually have backup people, emergency personnel, to know that this student has a seizure, so they should be able to give it if I'm not there.
Some of the calls that we get at the Epilepsy Foundation, Texas, are calls from parents that may have had difficulties with teachers who do not understand what their child is going through with epilepsy. They might think that the child is faking it or something like that. What would be your advice to parents who are having issues with the school personnel?
Okay. We encourage all of our nurses to talk to those teachers. Do inform those teachers this student has seizures. Do be aware. Do time the seizure. Call us. We'll get there. But before we get there, you're the one who's there with the student. But how to react? Because a lot of times we wouldn't want the teacher to be surprised that this student has seizures. So therefore, we prepare them. We give them an education plan. We prepare, tell them what to do with this student, how to protect him, the first aid with seizures, until we get there, and then we'll take over.
Great.
But a lot of times it's the fright of knowing this student has seizures. But education, once we educate them, a lot of times they're okay.
And do you find that the team aspect of maybe getting the school nurse and the teacher and the principal all together on the same page is the way to go? How would you suggest a parent getting their team at school together? Who would be on that team?
The people who would be on that team would be the nurse, the teacher, maybe an AP, but definitely the nurse usually has her emergency team, but immediately it would be the nurse, the teacher to have is the team, is usually the team. Maybe another backup person to help in case of a worse reaction. But definitely the nurse has to educate the teacher on what's going on with that particular student.
Okay, there's a question from one of our audience members. Her name is April. And she said, what are the options when attendance becomes difficult due to intractability? We tried homeschooling and would rather not do it again because our daughter benefits so much from the structure and social aspects of school. Plus our school is very willing to work with us. So it looks like, and this is an issue for a lot of our families, that attendance becomes a problem. They have to miss so many days of school.
Well, it depends. If they're a parent can go to 504. If the student is in regular ed classes, they can ask for 504 because the student might be out because of seizures. But usually when I was a high school nurse, I'd have students who have a seizure, high school, middle school nurse. I'd have a student who had a seizure, and then after they had their seizure, I let them lay in my office, and then when they wake up, I would inform the parent, and then I'd ask the student, what do you want to do? Do you want to go home or do you want to go to class? And a lot of times the students would say, I want to go to class. I let them go to class, and I'd call mom and say, mom or parent, and say, they decided to go to class, so I sent them to class and they were fine. So but there's a way to work with it, work with the system. But 504, if they're in regular ed or special ed, they can have an ARD for that particular student.
And to deal with excessive absences.
Yes, that is part of the 504.
And we would encourage, if anybody else in the audience has questions, please use the question bar to ask Ms. Blackman-Jones, any questions that you may have about the difficulties you may be having in your school, or if you want to give a shout out to a school that's doing great, we always love to hear about that as well. Can you give any stories of a great outcome or success with a student with epilepsy at school? In your school system?
Usually, most of the students that I've had have graduated. They had no problems. They would have their seizure and just keep going. They'd have their seizure. If there was not anything major went on, have a seizure, rest in my clinic, go back to class. We develop a rapport relationship, and they progressed and graduated. So I've had no problems with students with seizures.
All right. I would add that we've had a success through the Epilepsy Foundation Texas with one of our students who has come forward and made a seizure action team at Cy Falls High School, and so this young lady has epilepsy and has decided to stand up and teach other students about what seizures are and how they can first aid seizures. Have you heard in the state of Texas that seizure first aid is happening and people are learning more about epilepsy?
Yes. When I was a high school nurse, I had a health club, and a lot of times students are really want to be in charge. So I had this health club, and they would kind of like help me around with first aid things, and they wanted to learn. They wanted to know about different things and what's going on in the community and to help their own students. So a lot of times my health club students would be involved with, Ms. Jones, what did you need me to do? This student has this student has that. You need me to help you with this and help you with that. I'm like, yes. And so teaching them things about epilepsy, yes, they are very involved and want to learn, want to know, and want to be helpful.
And we do have training through the Epilepsy Foundation Texas and Central and South Texas where we can go out and do that training in schools, and school personnel and school nurses can do that training online. And we have a flyer in the handouts that talks about that. We got another question from one of our participants. Her name's Elaine, and she said, what would you do to recommend how to approach this issue with family? And I'm assuming with your family. Oh, right above that. Okay. So what should the nurse do if you have a student with multiple seizures in a daily basis, and the family is not very cooperative with the school, communicating or being more specific with what type of care they expect the school personnel to do? So she wants to know how you would approach the family when they're not being very communicative. And I know that we have a lot of school nurses on the line, so Elaine is coming from the school.
Okay, I would contact the doctor. Contact a doctor and keep a log of the seizure activity. This student is having a seizure this long, that long. Has it increased? Has it increased? From what time did it increase? The amount of seizures increased? And then I would have a conversation with the doctor. Did you know that this student is having seizures this often? Are you aware of that? So contact the doctor and find out, does the doctor know what's going on, or did the parents not tell the doctor and just sitting on the situation? But yes, I would contact the doctor and then compare my results and then say, what do you suggest?
And Elaine, we do have some seizure observation forms that we can send you if you would like to contact Kentrie LeDee, who organized this webinar, and she can send you those seizure observation forms that might be helpful. I hear you, Elaine. You said yes, please. So we will get those out to you for sure. All right. We have a question from Tiffany, and she says, my daughter attends school in Channelview ISD at Agoura Middle School, and hopefully I said that right. And I have to commend their quick action when my daughter, who usually has nocturnal seizures, had a seizure at school. The teacher, nurse, and students all quickly responded and took care of her with excellence. Wow, that's great. That's great.
That's great.
Shout out to Channelview ISD and your middle school. We love to hear stories like that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And that really talks about the teamwork that's required.
And letting the students know what's going on and tell them this is not a disease. This is not anything psychological. I mean, you know, psychological. But it could be normal. It's a normal thing. It happens, and this is what we do about it. You know, but this student is normal just like anyone else.
That's right. And you know, the Epilepsy Foundation, we really pride ourselves on being able to educate at all different levels. So if you have an elementary school or elementary student, we do puppet shows. If you have a junior high or middle school or high school students, we have education for them, all the way up to school personnel and school nurses. So we really do try to educate everybody, so everybody is on the same team and ready to hop into action, just like Channelview ISD. So very, very happy to hear that. All right, do we have any other questions out there before we turn it over to Kentrie to just wrap up the webinar and give you a few events that are coming your way? All right, we are going to go ahead and turn it over to Kentrie to wrap us up. Thank you, everybody, for your attention tonight. And here is Kentrie.
Okay, everyone. This is our upcoming events that we have as far as our webinar series will continue. It'll be 2 more webinars that will happen on Thursdays for the next 2 weeks on, oops, I am sorry. Okay. The next webinar series that'll be coming up on the next 2 weeks will be next week on February the 18th will be Seizures and Treatment Options with Dr. Rebecca Schultz. She'll be talking about medications and other forms of treatment for seizures. And then the following week after that is Thursday, February 25th, Creating a New Normal with Friends and Family, and that's with Dr. Naomi Meyer out of Dallas. And she will be talking about, you know, how to get the family and friends together to create a new normal, that so that the family can, you know, incorporate epilepsy into the family without a hitch. And so it'll be good to talk to someone that that's somewhat of a counselor that will help talk about those things. Also, if there are any of the handouts that you see that you want more of, if there's any resources that you would like for me to send you, you can always call me here at the Epilepsy Foundation at 713-789-6295 and ask for me, Kentrie LeDee. Or you can email me at kledee, KLEDEE at EFTX.org, and just let me know, shoot me a sentence in that you need some resources, what kind of resources, and your address, and I'll be sure to mail that out to you. And until next week, thank you very much for attending, and look forward to talking to you next week. Goodbye.